Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Confirm if you can hear my voice audible.
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. Welcome once again for another live session. Days 2 and counting. And today live session is going to be on design and design tools. Feel free to, for now, start dropping comments while we wait for the rest of the mentees and mentors and the presenters to join. So far, how is the journey? Your expectation? How is the morale? Is it still high or low? These are feedback that we want to hear. So please, while we're doing that, just feel free to use emojis. It's important. We value that. So we all know why we're here, right? I'm very, very, very happy, right, to be here. So I believe to all of you, right? We're here to learn. I'm of a zero design background, so I'm as expectant as you all. So let's keep that morale very, very, very high to get as much as we can from these great minds that will be sharing with us this presentation today. So I will be introducing them. So our presenters, we have Mr. Mustafa Tiamiu and Madam Abigail. They are when we call design experts. These ones, they are top notch, right? And they will be sharing with us the things that we haven't heard before, right? And it's something that we should really pay attention, give them the attention to learn and to grow in the program. So without further ado, Sir Ma, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, fine then. Hi everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Daniel. I hope you guys are having it or doing great today. So I'll just share my screen, just permit me a few minutes. Hello, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it's up now, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so my name is Mustafa Tiamiyu, and I'm here with my colleague Abigail. We work in the eHA design team, and it's nice to meet you guys once again. And Abigail will be walking you through the introduction to design and the introduction to design and design tools, Figma specifically. And at the end of our presentation, we'll have a Q&A session where you guys can ask questions, although you can drop your questions as well too in the chat. And Daniel will be coordinating this as well too. So I'm sure you guys would have heard about UI UX design before. Even some of you here might have had experience with design tools like Figma, since that's actually quite popular. So with our design sessions today, my aim is basically, or our aim is to break down what design is and any confusion you have about design. And you'll be seeing a whole lot of strange terminologies as well too. And we will try as much as possible to break this down, make it relatable to you guys. And one more thing as well too. After the session, I think today, the e-learning course on the introduction to design and design tools will be available to you guys. I think maybe today or maybe on Monday, I believe. And this would provide more insights to you guys and is robust, comprehensive enough. And I think that will be shared to you guys today. And Daniel, I'm sure will have more information about that. So let's get started. So what is design? Excuse me. So design basically is going by my slide here, it is the process of envisioning and planning the creation of objects, interactive systems, building vehicles, and basically all this, like I said, there'll be a lot of street terminologies. So, and basically design for design, users are the art of a design approach. And it's all about creating solutions for people, physical items or more abstract systems to address a need or a problem. So design can be broken down into a whole lot of things, right? We have industrial product design, sound design, AR, VR design, interaction design, designing of cars, designing of video game, digital product design that is actually more relatable to you guys than you guys would most likely be mostly be focusing on today. To break down industrial product design are items probably that you relate with like every day, probably your table, your chairs, right? You entering a car is an was designed using an industrial product design process, right? Sound design, all the voices and that you hear on movies, the background noises, all are all sound design. The background tune that you listen to on a music video or probably maybe on the music itself, they are all what sound design. Then AR, VR, virtual reality, I'm sure you guys would have heard about that as well too. They are all part of design. Interaction design, like things that you interact with, animations and things like that, they are all interaction design, right? So video games, it's all design, right? So UI UX designers also that get from and that we'll be looking into as well too. They are all part of design. So it's a very, very, very broad concept. And its meaning can vary from one field to another, right? Industrial product design, the meaning of design over there is quite different from what the meaning of design will be in UI UX design. The meaning of design in AR VR, the concepts are different, right? So when you hear design, right, it's not just in particular to just one thing, really. The concepts can vary across different industries, right? So, and at the end of it, users are the art of design. They are the center of design, of the approach of design. And basically it's about creating solutions for the people that would make use of these solutions, right? So for example, let me give in an example of something that you can relate with, right? Maybe let me use a tailor example, right? Or a fashion designer, right? A fashion designer, right? The client is at the center of that particular design or a particular dress that he or she will be making, right? Because you cannot make what that particular user would not use or what they would not need, right? So they are the center of that. Same thing with the carpenter, right? The user that will be making use of a particular chair that you are designing for, right, is at the center of that particular solution, right? You cannot create something that does not resonate with the user or that is not relatable with that user, because at the end of the day, you are not solving their problems. We are trying to make it more difficult for them to make use of. They are not solving their problem. They're actually creating more problems for that particular user, right? So basically, in short, what I'm trying to say is that design basically is trying to solve problems for a particular set of people, right? That will be making use of a particular solution. It might be physical items and the abstract systems, right? They're just trying to solve problems. And this would actually bring us to design thinking. And like I earlier said as well to that, right? It's design is the concepts are actually different from different across different industries that is shown here and that I've mentioned as well too. It's a whole lot, right? So, and what design could mean across them is different, right? So that brings us to design thinking. So what is design thinking, right? We'll be spending some time as well too over here. And design thinking is just understanding the people we are designing products for and services for, so we can solve their problems, just like I said earlier, right? Design is actually just solving problems for users. Excuse me. So the design thinking process, which is actually shown here, is an iterative process, right? And it has 5 main stages. I know we have 6 over here, but you can just ignore the last one. So the first is the empathize, the second is define, then the third is ideate, the fourth is prototype, the last one is test. So let's go through each of them. So the first one is empathize. So we cannot design a solution without properly identifying and understanding the people that will make use of this solution. Just like I said earlier, right? You cannot design something or craft something, right, without understanding who will make use of it, right? How do we do this? We do this by conducting surveys, user interviews, right? And at this particular point, we are trying to clear every assumption that we have about users. Now, let me give a more, relatable example. A tailor cannot sew a dress like without having a measurement of their client. Same thing as for example, like a carpenter that is trying to construct or craft something for a particular customer. You cannot craft that without knowing what the exact measurement for that particular client. If not, your solution won't fit into their problems. It won't solve that particular problem, right? You won't provide an adequate solution to that problem, right? So you might have an assumption that this is what it is, right? This is probably this person is size 8. This person is as tall as this. This is the length, this is the width. You might have an idea of what the dimension is, but without conducting a survey, right? Doing a survey or probably without a user interview, right? In this particular scenario, right? You cannot have the right figures, right? So with this, you're able to clear every assumption, right? Because at this particular stage, you're able to ask all these questions, right? You're able to ask all these questions, right, to the prospective user, and you're able to clear all assumptions, right? So the second stage will be define, right? So after collating our findings from this, the user interviews and the surveys and other means that we should have used in collating our findings from the target users, we're able to redefine the problem. And this is because we've been able to get more insights, informing us about the users of the product that would make use of the product, right? Then from this, then we can go ahead to ideate. So at this stage, what we are just doing is we are looking for brainstorming creative ways, right, to address the defined problem that we have already defined, right? And we can test them with the users. So to use the tailor analogy, so this is like the point where the client comes forward for fitting, right? At that particular point in time, you see a tailor, you go to see the tailor, right? And the tailor you're able to put on that dress that the tailor has made for you. And you're able to identify where some faults are. And you're able to tell the tailor that, oh, this is, I feel this place is too big for me. I feel this place is oversized. I feel that this length is too long for this particular arm, right? You're able to make that correction there. In this use case for digital product, you're able to, the designer is able to get feedback of the creative ways or creative solution that they have actually provided. Then we go to prototyping, which is the next stage here. So this is actually a more polished version of our design, and it actually shows the creative solution that we've actually provided, but in a more polished way. And this is actually bringing up all the solution, all the solution all together and having a polished version of it and making it interactive, right? So after this stage, we have the last stage, which is actually the test stage. This test stage, what we basically do is to just gather feedback from the client, right? Or that can be the user as well too, on issues regarding usability, functionality. Does it function well? Does it function to their expectation? Do they have problems using it? And if there's any problem, what we can do as well too will be to go back to the drawing table. This is how we use design thinking to solve problems. Using these steps that is listed over here. So it is an iterative approach right? And if there are problems, you can go back to the drawing board, to fix this problem and test it out as well. So with the users again, to make sure that yes, this particular problem has been fixed, right? Before launching it, right? To use the tailor analogy again, right? After the dress has been sent off back to the tailor to fix any of the feedback shared by the client, right? And the tailor has fixed it, sent it back to the client again that yes, I've fixed all the problems all the problems that you identified. All your observation has been cleared off, right? Does it work for you right now? If it doesn't work, then that process is what iterative, right? So I just hope this is actually more relatable to you guys, right? Just trying to break the process down so that you guys understand how the process actually works in a more defined manner for you guys. So that is the design thinking process, right? Empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test, right? Then iterate, right? So we empathize, right? Trying to understand the problem of the users. Then we define. After collating our findings, then we are able to redefine the problem, right? If we had an assumption before, we're able to clear that assumption with our findings. Then we're able to define what the problem is. Then from there, we're able to ideate this problem, right? That's we are brainstorming ways, creative ways that we can use to solve this problem, right? There are techniques here that we use as well to acquire framing, right? And all that, mind mapping. Those are the techniques that we use to ideate this problem. Then we prototype, right? Then we provide a polished, high fidelity version of our creative solution, right? That we believe that is actually informed on our user findings. Then we test this solution with the users to be sure that this issue, this issue, right, has been fixed, and that this actually matches up to their expectation as well too. And if they have feedbacks and if they have observation based of what has been displayed to them, right, we can go back to the drawing board, right? So that is the design thinking methodology, and that is the design thinking process, right? So I hope you guys have been able to understand. I hope you guys understand this really, though. But if you have any questions as well, too, we can come back to this at the end of the session. So the next one that we have here, the next slide is saying what is user experience design, right? So they say user experience design is the process of creating products and services that provides a positive and seamless user experience. And it involves the understanding of users' needs through research, defining user personas, conducting usability testing, iterative refining the design based on user feedback, right? So it's not actually much different from what I just shared in the design thinking methodology or the design thinking process, right? It's the process of creating products or services that provide a positive and seamless user experience, and it involves understanding the user's needs, right? And when we said understanding the user's needs, actually meant we empathizing with the user, right? Understanding what their problem is, right? That's true research. And defining what the user persona. Defining the user persona here, this terminology means that understanding that particular user, defining what they like, defining what they want, defining their problems, right, with a particular solution, right? How they relate with that particular solution at the moment. Then conducting usability testing. That's testing that particular solution that we have designed for them, testing it out with them to be sure that this particular solution that we have provided actually solves their problem. Then iteratively refining the design based on their user feedback. So we are going to continue fixing the design based on their feedback. There's something that they say that design never finishes, like the design is never done, right? So design, what they mean in this by this saying is that it's never finished. It's an iterative process, right? So like an app might be 10 years old, might be 5 years old, does not mean that design is done. No, it's an iterative process because our users have different wants, right? As they grow, as a user that started using an application or that started using a solution when he was 20 years old, right? What is wants and what is demands will be different when he's 40 years old. What you will expect to see will be different when he's 35, when he's 60 years old, right? So our design has to change right? Based on what? Based on the user's feedback, right? Because, things change, experience change, the way people use products change. So it is actually iterative, and users will be expecting that our solution actually fix those problems for them, right? So, like I said, user experience design thinking, basically the same thing based on our definition here. So our next slide, UI versus UX, right? So there's this misconception a whole lot of people used to have. They'll say UI, UX is the same thing, right? It's probably because it's called the same thing, but it's not the same thing. So UX is actually how the user actually experience a product or a service. And UI actually focuses on visuals, the visual interface, right? Like elements like typography, colors, menus, navigation. UX basically focuses on how the user actually uses the product, right? UX means user experience. UI means what? UI, right? User interface. And UX is just like a tree, right? While UI design is like a branch of that tree, right? Other branches of UX that you later come to find as well, as you explore, will be UX strategy, UX research, accessibility, gamification. All these things are things that you will later discover. It's actually a very, very wild field and very, very big field, right? So they are not the same thing, right? UI is different from UX is different from UI. UI is actually different from UX. UI is actually a subset of UX, right? So let's say UX itself is the what? Is the foundation. And UI is like the paint. It's actually like is built on it, right? So if your UX is wrong, right? No matter how the UI looks beautiful, the interface looks nice and all that, it looks functional, right? The app, the app is toast. It's not functional. It's broken. Even though it looks nice to the eye, it looks beautiful, right? But if the UX, if the foundation is broken, then it's toast, right? So there's a whole lot of misconception around that, and that's actually what I'm trying to clear up. So UI is just the visual elements, the aesthetics of the app. That's what UI is. Then the UX itself, right, is the experience of the app, right? So the next one we have here is UX design tools, right? So UX, and I think what we have here are most common tools used by UI UX designers, looking at the industry standard, right? So we have Figma, Sketch, Adobe Creative Cloud, and Google suites of products, right? Right. So regarding UX, we make use of different tools for design, right? Figma is quite popular in the space, but Figma is not the only tool that we make use of, right? For user interface design, for UX design. We have tools like FigJam, we have Miro, we have for the Figma, we use FigJam and Miro for user flows, which is actually part of the user research process. Sketch is an interface design tool as well, which is actually not more popular. It's only available for Apple users. Then we have Adobe XD. Adobe seems to have given up on this product, but it was actually a competitor to Figma because they do the same thing as well too. Then we have the Google suite of products. So we make use of the Google suite of products for mostly for our research purposes. The calendar app to schedule and manage meeting for our user interviews, right? Let's say we are trying to do a user interview with the user, right? We can use the Google Calendar app to schedule interviews and manage our interviews. Then we have Google Sheet as well too. Can use that to collect our research work and all that. Then there's Google Form. Yeah, most forgot about that. Then Google Form, we can use that for for surveys and questionnaires as well too. So basically that's it. Then we have the Adobe Creative Cloud. Tools like Illustrator can be used to design icons, right? Photoshop and all that. Those are those are tools that as well so that you make use of, but you would sparingly make use of this because nowadays tools like Figma, tools like Sketch are able to do some of these things that you will be doing with apps like Adobe Illustrator or Adobe Photoshop, right? So that's it with the UX design tool. Then fundamentals of UI design, right? So going by my slide, UI user interface refers to the visual elements, controls, interaction that allows users to interact with the digital product or service. And it encompasses the buttons, menu, icons, forms, typography, colors, and other visual elements that users see, interact with on the screen. The goal of UI design is to create interfaces that are aesthetically pleasing, intuitive, and facilitate a positive user experience, right? So in short, the user interface is a digital interface you can interact with. A quick example is using your phone, right? Everything you are interacting with, right, it's an interface on your phone. Without it, you won't be able to perform anything on that device, on your phone, or any device, basically. Because what? There's an interface to it. It doesn't have to be a mobile app. You using your phone, you're interacting with an interface, right? You see icons, buttons, menu, all of these things that you see, all these components that you see all come together to form an interface that you react with and you interact with, right? So, and basically it has to be a positive user experience, aesthetics is proper, it's functional, it's intuitive as well too. Then we have type of UI design, right? So under the type of type of UI design, we have graphical user interface design, that's the GUI. We have gesture-based interfaces. We have voice-controlled interfaces. So under GUI is actually quite common. It's actually what you interact with and relate with every day, like your phone, computers, ATM, right, and so on, desktop computers, right? All these things are what they have GUIs that what you interact with, right? Then we have gesture-based interfaces, and those gesture-based interfaces are interfaces that requires human movement as input. Examples will be like VRX headsets. VR headsets are quite popular nowadays, and if you have not seen a VR headset before, is what you can quickly just Google what a VR headset is, right? So VR headset means it's a virtual reality headset, and you can use gestures to control it. There are a whole lot of devices nowadays as well to that. What you can just do is to signify, right? And you're able to control that interface, right? So that's the gesture-based interface, right? So I think there are phones as well too right now that you can use their gesture-based as well too, right? I think the Apple Watch as well too. There are parts of it that are gesture-based and where you don't even need to press the device. You can just signify by moving your hands. You're able to control the device. So those are gesture-based interfaces. You don't even need to talk to it, right? By just giving it a sign, it would respond accordingly. Then we'll have voice-controlled interfaces. That's the last. So the voice-controlled interfaces that's the VUI. The interfaces that can be controlled using voice inputs, right? They are quite common as well. So nowadays, an example is like Siri. I think there's an assistant as well too on Google, right? Where you can just I've forgotten the name of that assistant, but you're able to control your phone using your voice, right? Same thing with Siri, right? You can have Siri perform things for you, right, by talking to it. Same thing with chatbots, same thing with smart speakers like the Amazon Echo, the Amazon Echo Dot, right? There are a whole lot of them right now. What you just need to do is just to talk to them and say, I've forgotten the name. I think on Siri, you call it Siri, forgotten what you call it on Amazon, right? And when you tell it to, you can tell it to off the lights, you can tell it to do stuff for you, can tell it to wake you up at so time, and it will listen and it will wake you at so time. You can tell it set the alarm for 30 minutes, set the alarm for 30 minutes, off the light in this in the bedroom, it will off the light, open the windows, right? By talking to it, right, relating with it, interacting with it, it would actually perform what you want it to perform, right? So those are so those are voice enabled user interface, VUI, right? Voice user interfaces, right? So that actually brings us to the elements of user interface design. So user interface design elements can be broadly categorized into the following groups. based on their functionality purpose within the interface. I think that as we should have added some of these elements to the screen over here. That would have actually helped, right, in relating better with this particular screen, and that would actually as well to help in making it more relatable as well, so that when anytime you actually see it, you're able to identify that, okay, this is what a navigational element looks like, this is what a checkbox looks like, this is what I think this is what you guys as well to going forward as well to this is what you guys would end up like as you progress in your course, you'll be seeing some of these things. But it would have been nice if we had them here though. So for the first one, we have input elements. And for the input elements, we have examples are what text field, checkboxes, radio buttons, sliders, select boxes, and date pickers, right? These elements are things that you interact with, right? For you to be able to input something into what or provide a response, right? So you need the input elements for you to be able to interact with a solution, right? To provide input into that solution, you need what the input elements, right? And these things are things that you interact with as well, too, almost like every day, right? Then we have the everyday. Anytime you make use of a digital solution, the way you input the way you are able to provide input is using these elements. Then we have the navigational elements as well. So these elements facilitate navigation and help users to move between different sections or screens within the interface. Examples include navigation bars, tabs, breadcrumbs, mega menus, and pagination, right? So these are things as well too that you can relate with as well to using digital products, right? So navigation bars, tabs, breadcrumbs, mega menus, and pagination. So for you to be able to move across one particular feature to another particular feature, you have to make use of a navigation bar, right? So, I want to go to the home, I want to go to the setting. Without the navigation bar, you're unable to do that. You're not able to do that, right? Then we have tabs, we have breadcrumbs. These things are elements that will actually help you to navigate through a particular solution, right? Then we have action elements. So these elements trigger specific actions or operations within the interface. Examples include buttons, icons, toggle switches, steppers, social media share buttons. These are very, very relatable as well too. So buttons are buttons that you find on solutions as well too. So let's say, for example, you've provided an input, right? You provide a response using the input element. For you to action on that particular input, right? For you to send that input, you need a button, right? So when you click on send, right, fine, you're able to send. There are some digital solutions as well too, where they are able to absorb these particular solutions without even a button, right? So then we have icons, toggles, switches, steppers, social media share button, right? When you use a social media share button to share something, without it, you're unable to share on social media because that's the function of that button. Then we have display elements, and these elements are responsible for presenting information or content to the users. Example would include cards, progress indicators, tooltips, badges, and notification. Like I said, it would have been nice for us to have some of these elements, so that would have even helped in illustrating this better to you guys. So progress indicators, cards we use it to show information, right? To display information to the users. Progress indicator to indicate how much progress that the user has been actually able to make across a particular feature, right? Then we have tooltips, right? Tooltips actually are ways as is a means of what communicating to our users. Then we have badges, right? To notify user of a particular thing. Then we have notification as well too, right? Then we have the last one as layout elements. And these elements contribute to the overall structure and organization of the interface. Example includes grids, accordion, modals, windows, slideshow, carousels, right? So grids are things we use grids as well to help us with positioning our components, our elements well properly on the interface. Then we have accordion. Accordion can be used to categorize to categorize content. Then we have modal windows. This can be used to display critical information, and it can be used to display can be used to display critical information to inform the user of a particular action that they want to take, right? And can be used to show more information, right? Then we have slideshow, interactive. These are very, very interactive elements, right? I know you guys would have seen this. You might not just know it's called carousels, but maybe when you see a slider on a website, right? You see, or you see on Instagram, right? Instagram uses carousel a lot now. People are able to post multiple pictures at the same time. That ability for people to that picture that shows that multiple pictures that you're able to scroll on is a carousel, right? Those multiple informations, that those multiple pictures you're able to scroll on, right? Those are interactive carousels. So those are elements of what user interface design. Then we have feedback. Okay, we have more here. We have feedback elements. Then we have media elements. Then we have typography elements. So for the feedback elements, so these elements provide feedbacks to users indicating the status of outcome of their actions. Examples include progress bars, spinners, success or error messages, and validation indicators, right? So this, for example, right, for a success and success/error message, right, gives feedback to the user of a particular action they are taking. So let's say I've been able to use my input elements, then I'll be able to use my action element, which is the button, to submit a particular query, where my feedback element will be the one providing response, right, on the status of that particular action I just took, right? So I can get an error, I can get a success, right? So that's what the feedback elements actually take care of, right? Then we have media elements. These elements involve the integration of display of media content such as images, videos, audio players, and galleries. So I'm sure this is very, very straightforward. So images that you see, videos that you see, audio players that you see, and galleries that you see, right? On interactive mediums that we interact with. Then we have typography elements. Typography elements elements that pertain to the use of typography, including font sizes, styles, hierarchy to enhance readability and visual appeal, right? So these are things as well too, as a designer that you'll be relating with every day, basically. So the font sizes, styles, hierarchy to enhance readability and visual appeal. Readability actually means that users being able to read what's written in it, or what is written, or what is particularly shown to them, right? And the hierarchy of this will actually mean as well to how this particular content, how this information is actually being arranged together, right? You can't arrange a big text, right? You can't put a title at the bottom, right, and put the body at the top, right? So these are things that you guys will be able to relate with, right? Probably when you start coding start doing your HTML and CSS, these are things as well too that you'll be seeing, that will be applying to it as well too. So I think that will be it on the UI elements that we have there. Then we have building blocks of UI design. The next slide here. So to create effective UI design, it's essential to understand and utilize the following blocks, right? One, we have layouts. Two, we have typography. Three, we have colors. We have visual hierarchy. We have icons and imagery. We have buttons and controls. We have grid and spacing. We have consistency. We have responsiveness. We have accessibility. We have micro interactions as well too. So let's go to one. So layouts, right? They say the layout is the arrangement and positioning of various UI elements within the interface, including the placement of content, navigation, and interactive elements. A well-structured layout ensures clarity, hierarchy, and easy comprehension of the interface. Let me break this down. So layout, what does a layout mean basically, right? So a layout is just like a canvas, right? Let's call it like a big rectangle where we place all those elements that we discussed about in the last slide, right? We place all these elements into this canvas to form an interface. So the screen that you see here is actually a website, the hero section of the website. And you will see that all these elements that we have mentioned, right, some of them appear here, right? See the navigation menu, right? With the navigation bar, I made mention of this. So we have the action element as well too, the buttons as well too. If the user wishes to open an account, we have that as well too over here. Then we talked about hierarchy, right? In typography elements, this is hierarchy. You realize that the first thing that you see when you look at this screen is what? And when you look at this particular canvas, you see all in one card. You realize that it's big, right? That is the statement that we want the user words to see, right? Then we see other what contents under it, right? Then where does your eye go to? Your eye goes to what? Open an account, right? Then your eye goes to what? Connect us. It goes to the subtitle under it, right? So the elements together, we bring in all these elements together to form what? To form an interface, right? Depending on what, or depending on our needs as our use cases at that particular point in time, right? So we have content, navigation, interactive elements, right? We have, all this actually makes a well-structured layout depending on the use cases at that particular moment, right? So that is layout. Then we have the second one, typography. So we talked about that as well too, right? In the previous slide, when we talked about the use of fonts, and this is actually the use of font sizes, line spacing, text formatting to enhance readability and visual appeal, right? All these things, right, looks like a whole lot of terminologies right now, but there are things that you would be learning on your e-learning course, right? It breaks it down. We have videos as well, so that you would watch that actually informs you better on, on what these terminologies mean. And one thing as well, so that I always encourage you guys to do is to go to Google, right? When you are confused about something, Google it, right? Google, and now we have ChatGPT, right? And a whole lot of AI solutions. When you just put it into it, boom, they will provide a more comprehensive understanding of these things, right? Probably maybe you Google and you're not being able to, it does not really make sense to you, right? You're able to make sense of it using these solutions, right? So that is typography. So typography, just like I said earlier, basically plays a very, very important role, right, in passing information, right? Because if we have, for example, like this typography that is written over here, imagine we don't have spacing over here, or imagine if it's written really, really, really small. At the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to the user, because the user will not be able to have time to understand what is being written here, because it does not make sense, right? It's small, right? Or someone that is using glasses, based on your user research that you have done, that your user actually uses glasses to see. Now imagine you writing or having a text that is very, very small for them to look at, right? At the end of the day, the solution that you have provided does not solve the need for that particular user, right? And how we are able to, even though that you have made that mistake, how we are able to identify that was a mistake will be through user testing, usability testing during the testing stage, where the user is saying, what is written here? Then you know that yes, there is a flaw, right, in this solution, right? So all these things actually plays a role, right, in providing a better user experience to our user. Just like I said earlier, why design is actually at the center, and so the user is actually at the center of design, right? If the solution doesn't work for the user, then probably what you have done is, you've just wasted time, right? So that's typography. Okay, so the next one will be colors. So the next one will be colors, right? And they say the choice of application of colors to create a visual, cohesive, and aesthetically pleasing interface. So colors can evoke emotions, right? Differentiate elements, communicate meaning, proper color selection and harmonization contributes to the overall usability and branding of the interface, right? So colors is just like basically everything, really, right? At the end of the day, that's actually how you polish your product, right? Now, I've done a whole lot, right? And if you don't get your coloring right, it becomes a problem, right? And one thing as well too is that a lot of people don't talk about is that colors, right, have a way of evoking emotion, right? Imagine, right, this button, for example, a particular action button, right, is in red. An action button can be in red, right? So, to communicate to the user that this particular action is destructive, right? But imagine you're telling me to proceed with red, right? I might look at it as, the user might have a bit of a fright that, what, like, why do I have a danger color here, right? Or there are some cultures at times as well too that that colors as well too. Some certain particular colors, right, means different things for them in their culture, right? So as a designer, right, just like I've said earlier as well too, the user is at the center of your solution, right? So if you don't understand the culture of the people you are designing a particular solution for, that that, oh, this color or this particular number, right, evokes something, a different type of what, and it means something in their in that culture or in that particular religion, it becomes a problem, because that is what you provide, and they're like, the users won't becomes troubled about it, or they don't even make use of that solution. So indirectly, what you've created a solution that doesn't work, right, and you're going to lose money, and your organization loses money, right? So proper color selection and harmonization contributes to the overall usability and branding of what on that interface, right? So use of color is very, very different, and how to use it is very, very important as well. So you'll be going through this as well too on your e-learning course. Then we'll have visual hierarchy. So that's number 4. So arrangement and the emphasis of elements based on their importance and relevance by using varying sizes, colors, typography, positioning. Designers can create a clear visual hierarchy that guides users' attention and helps them navigate what easily, right? Imagine, for example, this interface, right, that's been created here. Imagine, right, where we have a very, very, very small content, or probably I would have used the first one as example, right? So imagine we land on a website, right? And we have all the contents as very, 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 very small, right? In this part, looking at it first, basically, you are not able to you are not able to know you are not able to inform the user of your value proposition. You are not able to let them know why they are here in the first place. You are not able to communicate to them that this is what our solution, this is what we are actually solving for, right? Because all the content on it looks very, very small, right? So you would look at this and you see that there is a visual hierarchy over here, right? The contents that are supposed to be big, the visual value proposition is up there that I'm able to see. You see the navigation is placed at where it's supposed to be placed. It's not placed at the footer. It's not placed where it's difficult for the user to find, right? All this actually all contributes into having the proper visual hierarchy, right? So, and if you mix any of these things wrong, right, during your user testing, you're able to find out from users that, when users start asking, please, where can I find the navigation? Where am I able to find this, right? Your hierarchy is wrong, right? So the visual hierarchy here we're talking about is sizes, colors, typography, and positioning, right? Designers should be able to create a clear visual hierarchy that guides users' attention and helps them to navigate the interface easily, right? Because if that becomes a problem, right, users are not able to make use of the product. And like I keep on saying, right, the users are at the center of design, right? If a user is not unable to use a particular solution, then you're failed, right? So then we have icons and imagery. So icons and imagery, we use it to communicate, to represent action, concepts, or the objects within the interface. Icons and imagery provide a clear visual cues and aid in recognition and enhance the overall user experience, right? So we use them to communicate, right? And to not to make our design look bland, and we use icons and images to make them look interesting, right? To further communicate what we are trying to say. Imagine that particular landing page right now. We just have content there, right? But we don't have any imagery to help us better communicate to the customer, right? Oh, you have an all-in-one card, right? Okay, yes, a card could mean another thing entirely in a different industry, or it could mean another thing entirely. But when we had multiple ATM cards to show that yes, all-in-one card, but you can we can have just only, our solution provides, our value proposition says only one card, right? But we provide just only one card that solves all your payment needs, right? So the user is able to relate with it because there's imagery that shows that, oh, you have access, you have Visa,
you have a UBA card. But with this solution, we provide you just only one card that solves all of those your payment problems. So you don't have to have multiple cards again, right? So that's one of the ways that what imagery can provide what more clearer communication, right? So I would be handing off to my colleague over here, Abigail. She'll be the one taking you through the rest of this presentation. Thank you very much, and be would be waiting to answer your questions during the Q&A session. Right? Thank you. Abigail, should I
Thank you
still
very
maintain my
much.
screen, or
Yes,
I should
please.
stop sharing? Okay, fine then.
Yeah, please keep sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe the next slide, please. Okay. So buttons and controls. So far we've been talking about UI design elements, what you see on a user interface when you interact with it. And these are very common ones. You would find buttons, controls everywhere. This enable you to perform actions or to navigate on a user interface. And when you design your buttons properly, or they're well designed on an application, it's very clear for the user, for anyone who's interacting with that interface, to know that clicking on this is going to perform a certain action, right? So it provides clear affordances, responsive feedback. It responds, like if you click on a button, sometimes you see it loading. I don't know if you've experienced that. That is called responsive feedback. And that way it's just intuitive. It's natural to interact with such elements. So this is what buttons look like. Some other controls you would find on the user interface are checkboxes. Maybe if you want to agree to terms and conditions, that's an example of how to use checkboxes. Radio buttons to choose one out of like 3 options or 2 options. Are you male or female? You would use a radio button to select male or female, right? And then there's also a toggle switch if you want to turn something on and off. Say, for instance, do you want to receive notifications, right, for something? Yes, I do. So you put on the toggle, or no, I don't. You put it off. So that's what you use a toggle switch for, right? So can we go to the next slide? Next thing is grid and spacing. So I know my colleague has explained to you layout, right? How things are organized on a user interface. One thing that contributes a lot to layout is grids and spacing. It's basically how you arrange content on a screen or on an interface, right? So let me see, for instance, you're writing on a book and you need to take some information, maybe like a log or a register. You see how you use rulers to draw columns. People can enter their name, their signature, the dates they entered. I don't know if you've seen books like that or registers like that sometimes when you visit a public office, right? So that kind of thing is called a grid. And we have the same thing in design. So these grids allow us to use the space we have to distribute elements on the user interface, so that way things can be visually balanced. People can look at things and be like, okay, this looks okay. You know, they don't detect anything falling out of place. It also helps with readability, right? If things are properly organized, it's easier to understand. And we can even use our grids to make sure the most important things stand out. For example, going back to that register book, you will see that the title, maybe register for so day, it's written in bold at the top of the screen, right? That makes sure that people have an idea of what the important content is. There's also white space, which we don't want to fill up the whole screen with content, right? We want to leave some empty spaces so that the most important things stand out. So all of these contribute to grid, to layouts, organization, grids and spacing. So as you can see here on the left, we have an idea of how many pixels we define or we measure space in design using pixels, right? So how many pixel space do you want? Is it 8 pixels, 12 pixels? And then we have different screens. On the right, you can see desktop, tablet, iPhone. If you're designing something for desktop, you want to make sure that it's also designed well for tablets, it's designed well for iPhone, so that if someone is visiting that application on their phone, it doesn't look like, oh, it doesn't look like something that was only designed for desktop. It needs to adapt to the screen that they're using. So this is just giving you an idea of grid and spacing. It also applies to buttons, CTAs, other UX, UI elements that we've seen before now. All right, next one, number 8. Consistency. Consistency is just making sure that things are uniform, right, on your user interface. You're not looking at the home screen and maybe it feels a little different, and then you go to the account screen and it's completely something else. Maybe it's using different colors or things you've never seen before. You're like, am I in a different world? Where did I step into? So consistency helps to give that uniform experience to the user, to the end user, applying design patterns, styles, behaviors. So if I click on a button and it just changes color, I don't want to go to another screen and maybe design it in such a way that if you click on the button, it will bounce or it will disappear. The user will be thrown into confusion because that's not what they are used to in that application. So it's important to maintain consistency. This place said helps users develop mental models. That simply means to have an idea in their head of how things should work, right? So you don't want to confuse them. If they already know that clicking on a hamburger menu will open the menu and clicking on it again will close it, you don't want to introduce a different behavior from that people are not used to, right? So on these screens, you can see this is an application and you can see the consistent use of maybe green or other colors, right? On the home page, there's a card there, a card design. But on the card screen, you can see that same card is there, right? It's the same design, even though there are other cards in different colors, but the layout is the same. So the card is not designed in one way on the home page and designed in a different way on the cards page. That's not how it should work. They're not using a lighter shade of green on one screen and using darker shade for similar things on other screens, right? So maintaining consistency is important because it improves the usability of the platform, of the application you're designing, making sure that people find it familiar. They can predict that, okay, based on my experience using this app, if I do this, this is what should happen. All right, so this is a very important principle to remember. All right, so number 9, please. Great. Responsiveness. So this is what I was saying earlier about making sure that your design adapts to different screen sizes, different interfaces, right? Because people nowadays interact with the internet in different ways. They can use it while they're at home, maybe with their computer or when they're at work, or with a tablet or even a mobile phone when they're on the move. Sometimes they even use their watch, right, to see notifications and do other things. So making sure that your design is responsive, it helps to maintain the user friendliness of an application. You can see on this homepage, this is on Splash. The homepage on a desktop, it's the same thing on a tablet, but it has been, the size has been readjusted. And it's the same thing on a mobile phone, right? It needs to adapt to different screens so that everyone using those individual screens can have a tailored experience for their own device. So you will learn how to do this as when you take the course and you continue to practice. You learn with time how to use grids and spacing to maintain responsiveness of your designs. All right, next one, please. Accessibility. Now, this is something that I really appreciate, but I think in this part of the world, in Nigeria, it's something that we're still trying to get used to. It's more common outside of Africa, but it's good as someone who's starting a career in design or in development that you really consider accessibility, which really just means making sure that your interface, your design, your application, your code, it's accessible or it's usable by people with disabilities, every kind of person, right? So this includes providing alternative text for images so that someone who is blind, for instance, and cannot see the image you posted, if the screen reader reads out the text, it kind of describes the image, right? So they can have a visual idea, like in their brain, in their mind, of what the image is about. And then using appropriate color contrast as well, right? You don't want to put a button that is maybe white on a background that is like light gray. There's no difference. It's very difficult to tell, right? Some people have color blindness, so they might not be able to tell colors apart very well. And then there's also ensuring keyboard accessibility. They can use their keyboard to move between elements on your interface. So accessibility involves everything: the colors you're using, the size of your font. You don't want it to be too small that people cannot read it. Even the text that you're using, can people understand it? Are you switching between languages? Do you have alternative images or alt text? Layout, how is your layout organized? Are your buttons too tiny, or are they big enough on a tablet or on a phone that people can actually tap it easily? Sometimes you might use an application, you're trying to tap something, but that thing is so small and you have a white thumb or a white finger and it's kind of hard for you to get it, right? So that means that interface has poor accessibility. Also using labels. For instance, you're filling a form and it says first name, last name, but some of them don't actually call the fields. Like they don't put a label on top of the field, first name or last name. So when you start typing, whatever was there disappears and you're like, okay, which one is even the first name? Which one is the last name, right? So labels will help so that you're not questioning all these elements. So accessibility is something to keep in mind. Don't ignore it because it's not very common in this part of the world. No, it's very important. All right, next one, please. Micro interactions. This is something that's really fun. It wasn't really there at first, but in the most recent years, it has come up. Basically, all these subtle animations, interactions that you see that occur when you do something. So maybe you're switching from light mode to dark mode, and it kind of moves like the switch moves like a literal switch in your homes. Or there's a small animation like you can see in the second one, view results. There's a small kind of animation on that button. Or even when you're downloading a file, you can see the arrow doing like, something is actually coming into your system. These things are called micro interactions, and they should be designed for touch, for tapping, and even for clicking, right? These provide visual delight. They make the interface enjoyable to use. They help the user to know that, yes, you just performed an action. The system is currently working on it. It communicates responses from the system effectively. So it's not like you're clicking something and you're not getting any result. No, that's not how it works. Micro interactions help to make the experience of using interfaces more interesting. It's not something you have to worry about too much as a beginner, but if you go into a career in design, or even as a developer, sometimes designers will give you this and you're like, how do I start implementing this? Well, you can always work with them to implement those things. They're usually predefined files that you can tie into your code. So that's it on micro interactions. Great, so we've come to principles of UI design. These are like the things that should guide you when you're creating a user interface, when you're creating a design for your project, for your application. You should remember your design should be user-centered. Design with the user in mind. Think about them, right? You could be designing an application and you say, oh, it's for maybe, it's for kids. It's for kids, maybe like a game for kids or a learning app for kids. You're not going to design it like you would design it if you were the person to use it. No, you're designing it for kids. So you have to think about them. How do kids interact with things? What do they like? They like bright colors. They like things that react, animation. So those are the things that you would put in mind. So you cannot design a user interface without considering the user experience first. You have to sit and think, who am I designing for? You have to conduct research, empathize, try to understand their problems, and of course, involve them in the process. Don't design and then not have your app tested out with actual kids. It doesn't work that way. You have to put the kids, the users, in the center of your process. Then consistency, as we discussed earlier, it's an important principle of UI design. Making sure that your design elements, layout, how things are organized, navigation, how people move from one page to another, interactions throughout your interface are consistent. You don't want things to respond in one way on one screen but in a different section, they do something entirely different. It will confuse the users, right? Consistency helps them to develop patterns, to develop mental models, and it reduces the effort they have to put. You don't want them to be thinking, oh, how am I supposed to learn to use this application? Your application should be easy to use. It shouldn't even need a manual, right? Most applications, they shouldn't need a manual because they should be easy to use and learn. Feedback and response. You want to make sure that you provide timely feedback to users for actions that they are making on the platform. So whether or not you want to be a designer or a developer, this is something you need to take note of, because even in coding, you have to consider that when someone clicks a button, there should be a response immediately. If someone is about to delete something, you should ask them, are you sure you want to delete it? So all those things are feedback, giving response. It can be visual, something they see. It can be something they hear. For instance, if there's a notification on your phone, you hear it, you hear a sound. Or some iPhones, if you're about to perform an action, it will vibrate, right? So it can be haptic, that is called haptic feedback. It can be auditory, something they hear, or visual, something they see. Feedback is important for helping users to understand the outcome of the interactions they're making on that interface. And then simplicity. I think this should be number one. This should be the biggest principle of UI design. Keep it simple. If your interface has red, blue, green, different colors everywhere, different elements on it, because you feel like, oh, this is useful, that is useful, it might just be confusing to the end user. So try to make sure as much as you can that it is simple. Simple doesn't mean empty, right? Your interface can actually have a lot on it, but still be simple depending on how you design it. And an empty interface might even still not be simple enough, right? So keep it clean, arrange things properly. If you look at it and it feels like something is unbalanced, or in the corner of your eye, one thing is like falling somehow, or is not equal, you need to consider all those things because they contribute to simplicity. Simplicity helps me to just know I can pick up your app and accomplish my tasks easily without worrying about, oh, what does this button here mean? Or why is this one here? Or I'm getting too distracted by all these other things when all I want to do is just pay for something, right? So try to make your design as simple as possible. Help them to just achieve the main goal without distracting them. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we still have some more. Efficiency and speed. Your design should be efficient. It should help users to accomplish the task they want to accomplish in the fewest steps. So if people want to sign up for your app and get on the application, that's not when you start asking them all their background, all their personal history, which school they went to and all that. No, you can just take the most important information as quickly as possible, their name, their email address, and get them signed up. Later on, if you feel like that information, some more information is needed, you can always ask them, but try to minimize the number of steps as much as possible. Even provide shortcuts. Like if someone doesn't want to do this right now, you can say, okay, skip this for now. Allow them that flexibility if possible. Make sure that your design is simple and it's light so that it loads quickly. Because if it takes time, have you ever been to a website and it's taking forever to load and you just get frustrated and you just close it? It's because it's not fast enough, right? It's not sticking to this principle of UI design. Another thing is flexibility and customization. If possible, as much as possible, allow people to personalize their interface. Like how many of us like to change our wallpapers, our profile pictures, or even from light mode to dark mode on some apps on our phone? We all love that because it helps us feel like we are in control, right? So flexibility allows users to customize their experience and just use the interface their own way. So provide all these options if you can. Provide accessibility options. If someone wants to have the content read out to them, that should be there. If any other kind of thing that allows customization, of course, don't make it too distracting that it becomes like a game or something that is not meaningful. It always has to be meaningful to what you're doing. Then we have error prevention and recovery. So when using your application, you want to help people know to avoid making errors, or you want to prevent them from making an error. For instance, If someone mistakenly want them to delete a file, maybe they click something and it just deletes, they would feel bad. Like, what if they didn't mean to do it? Or what if their kid was playing with their app or with their phone and ended up deleting something important? So you as a designer, you're like, how do I avoid making that happen? So maybe you hide the delete icon so that you actually have to put some effort into even finding it. Or even if it's out there in the open and someone clicks on it, there should be like a dialogue. Are you sure you would like to delete this file? And then they have to manually click yes. Sometimes you would even see a form that will tell you, okay, if you want to delete your account, type in your password, just for them to be sure that this is what you want to do. All these things help so that the user is prevented from making errors while using the application. And even after they have made the error, help them to recover from it. So maybe their child deleted a file by mistake. Do you provide an ability to undo it? Sometimes you delete something and it says, oh, it's deleted, but you can undo. And then you just click undo and it comes back. Or you're trying to send an email, maybe on Gmail, and maybe you didn't finish drafting it, or you made a mistake and you changed your mind. In like 5 seconds, you can still undo sending that email and it comes back to you. So that is error recovery. So think about that when you're designing interactions for these kind of actions, like deleting, all these destructive actions or critical actions on your application. Aesthetic integrity, really, aesthetics is really just how it looks, right? Do you like it? Is it appealing to the eyes? Is it consistent? Does it align with your brand? For example, we know Chicken Republic, their colors yellow and red. If Chicken Republic was to design a mobile app, their mobile app, they launched it, and then you go and open it and it's blue, the buttons are blue or green, wouldn't you feel like it's a scam? Like you can't trust it? Yes, because that's not their brand. That's not what you know about them. So pay attention to things like that. The looks of your interface should stick to the brand, stick to the purpose for which you're designing it. And this is where color theory, like the use of colors, all of these things come in, the use of font types. There are some fonts that are too playful for something that should be serious. And there are some that are too serious for something that should be playful. For instance, you're making a game and you're using Times New Roman, or you're using another font that looks so, serious, right? Those things don't go together. So think about that in designing applications to make sure that the overall look of the system makes people feel a good way about it and not negatively, or doesn't leave them feeling scammed or feeling like this application is fraudulent, right? That's important to keep in mind. All right, next slide, please. Great. Figma, you've probably heard about Figma. Figma is our design tool of choice at eHA, but it's not the only design tool that's available. As I'm sure you heard when my colleague was going through the types of design tools available, Figma is only one of them. It's really powerful. We really like it for the features that it allows. It's easy to work amongst ourselves as designers, and even with stakeholders, like working with our product managers, working with developers. Figma helps to bring everyone together on that design, right? So we can all work simultaneously, work at the same time. We can collaborate when we need to. We don't have to be sending things over from one tool for designers to another tool for developers to work on, right? So it's multiplayer. It just means multiple people can work on a file at a time. You can design wireframes on Figma. You can do your UX flows, user experience flows. Maybe when you're trying to design the flow from when the customer signs up to when they eventually make a purchase, what does that look like? You're just thinking about it. You can use Figma to just put your thoughts down to visualize what that flow looks like. You can do the actual user interface design, UI design. You can make it a prototype so that people can click on something to go to somewhere else. That's called prototyping. There is dev mode, developer mode, which makes developers understand certain technical things about your design, like maybe some measurements that they need to get out of it, or some specifications, like, okay, which exact color was used here, how much space was used here. Dev mode enables all of that. And then plugins are things that make Figma even more powerful. Some people sit and design some tools that can help you as a designer to improve the accessibility of your design. For instance, it will check, okay, this color you used here, is it right to use it here? Is the font too small? There are plugins that can do that for you. So to get started with Figma, you go to figma.com. Please don't do it right now because we're still on the session. But afterward, feel free to go to figma.com, and then we'll go to the next slide. So I already explained why we choose Figma. It helps us hand off or deliver our design work to developers easily. It helps us to collaborate together. We can convert designs into CSS code, as I'm sure you are going to learn about CSS eventually. You already know about HTML, you learn about CSS and JavaScript. So Figma is able to convert into CSS and JavaScript. You can also export assets for projects. Maybe we use the logo in the design. We want to send that logo to the developer. They can just go on the Figma file and get it themselves and implement it in their code, right? So it allows an easy transition from design to development. And this is what it looks like when you go on figma.com and you sign up. You register with your email address, the same email address that you signed up for the program with. And then once you're started to work with Figma, you start having files on Figma. This is where you will see all your files on the home page of the Figma application. Next, please. So you can create a new file. So while on Figma at the top, you'd see new design file. There's also FigJam. So FigJam is a Figma tool that is more for like drawings or like user flows, you know, things that are not necessarily your high fidelity, like your screen, right? It can be maybe your wireframes or sketches you want to use or notes you want to write. You can use FigJam for that. But when you actually want to design like what an app should look like, your user interface, you create a new Figma file, a new design file. This is what the canvas looks like. And then you can start designing, right? So we'll look into some of the tools on that Figma interface. Next slide, please. So how to navigate the Figma interface. Try not to get confused by any of this. You will have a lot of time to go over it. And the more you use it, the more you get used to it. But I'm sure you're familiar with like shape tools, like shapes, rectangles, lines, arrows. Some of your interfaces will need some of these shapes. So Figma has like the shape tool at the top. You can see the rectangle there at the top. And if you click on it, you would see like all the different shape tools. Figma has toolbars. Like the toolbar is just at the top there, like all those icons you see at the top of the first image there. The one with the arrow, the one with the hash, the one with the rectangle, the pencil or pointer icon. So those are all the different tools that are on Figma. You'll get used to them eventually. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see your pages that you're working on, maybe home page, profile page, login page. You can have all those things on different pages, but I would advise keeping them to one page so that you can easily see everything at once. But if you want to have a different page, maybe for like all your assets, like the images you're using or the buttons, you can create a second page where you can have all that. But I would advise if you're designing an app, keep all the screens on one page, keep assets on a different page, your style guide, your colors, all those ones can be on a different page. Then on the right-hand side, you can see, I see someone raising their hand, but if you have a question, please just hold on. We'll be able to take questions soon. On the right-hand side, you can see like some design, what would I call it? Maybe dimensions, right? Some sizes, width, height of your elements. I'm trying not to use too technical terms. As you go into it, you would be able to figure it out. But from this right-hand side, that's where you can control some things about your design, how wide you want it to be, how tall you want it to be, you know, if you want to rotate it or move it somewhere else, and then prototyping, how to connect screens from one place to another. All those settings can be done on Figma. Next slide. So I said not to do that right now. After the session, you can start to get yourself familiar with Figma, but for now, please pay attention to this so that it can set you up properly when you eventually sign up on Figma. So Figma is actually a web-based tool. You can use it online. You don't need to download it, but if you want to download it, you can always do that. But for a start, you can use it online for free. You can add frames and tools. So to start working on, the different screens you have, you can use frames, right? You can draw a frame for like your home page, another frame. When we say frame, think of it like, when an artist is trying to draw something or maybe make a painting, you see that page they use, that white paper that they draw on. You can think of it as a frame. That's your canvas, right? It's like your art board. And everything goes on that frame. So you can see the frames up there. They have grids. You see those red lines or those red spaces. That's a grid system, which allows the designer to know, okay, I need to align things properly on this page. It helps them to organize their work. And then there's different shapes. You can use rectangles. If you want to use a button, you can pull a rectangle and put it on your screen and design it. You can use a circle. Maybe you want to use a circle for like your profile picture. You can do that. There's triangles as well. There's stars. There's different kinds of shapes. There's even polygons like hexagons and octagons and other ones, depending on what you want to achieve, right? You can have frames for different types of devices, for mobile phones, iOS and Android, for web, your tablet, even for your watch. Figma has frames for all of that. Next slide, please. Great. So when you want to select elements, maybe on your homepage, you have put a button, you have put a header, and you want to select it. You just have to tap on it. But sometimes it may not be easy to tap because there's something called grouping. Let's say you have a header, and on the header, you have maybe the logo, you have home, about, all the different pages for your navigation. And then you select everything and group it. Sometimes if you want to go back and just select the profile picture or the logo or maybe one of the navigation items, you might not just clicking on it will not work because you've already grouped it. So what you would need to do, you can hold down the control key or command key on your keyboard and then click, and then that way you'll be able to go down and select exactly what you want when you have grouped, you've put it in a group. If that's one way to do it. Another way is to right click and you will see something called select layers. Then you just go and select like the particular layer you're looking for, whether it's logo or this or that, right? So that option is there. Next slide. Dimensions and measuring. Dimensions is basically like how we measure space, right? What's the space between these buttons? What's the space between these elements? These are called dimensions. And I told you before, we measure dimensions, space in design using pixels, right? There are other units of measurements, but the most common one is pixels. So if you want to see the space between two elements, you select the first element and then you hold down the Alt key and then hover on the next one, and you can see, it will tell you, there's 300 pixels between this element and this element. There's 200 pixels between those elements. But as you start to use Figma, you get to understand all of this. Next, please. All right, so in generating assets, like I said, sometimes you might use a logo and you want to give the logo to your developer or to someone else. You can give them access to the file to get it for themselves, or you can export it for them. So if you want to export it for them, you select the element. Let's say you select the logo on the design file. Then on the right-hand side of your Figma page, you will see where to export it there. At the bottom, you'll see export. You can export it. When it says 1x, it means ×1. It means the original size of that logo. If you want to double it, it's 2x. If you want to triple it, make it bigger, 3x, 4x, however you want it to be, you can do that. You can export it as a PNG, as a PDF, as an SVG, different formats, right? Sometimes they'll tell you they want it as an SVG because SVG is clear. It will not be blurry when it goes on the web page, right? Sometimes it's like that. So we're just telling you how to be able to export assets on Figma. All right, next, please. Great, so communication. Like I told you, Figma allows multiple people to work together in a design. So maybe you're 2 designers on a team, or you're a developer working with another designer. You can use comments within Figma. You just press the C key on your keyboard, or you right click, you select the area you want to click first. If it's a large area you want to select, and then you press C. And then you can leave a comment. You can mention, hey, Abby, like maybe Abby is the designer or someone else, you can mention them and say, oh, can I have this logo? Can I have this icon? Well, can we make this bigger? You know, things like that. You can just leave comments on Figma. Of course, you can do that on Slack outside of Figma, but if you feel like you want to be specific, you want to know exactly you want them to know exactly what you're talking about, you can just use a comment, because then they can see exactly where your comment is on. All right, next slide, please. So in conclusion, during this brief introduction to Figma, we have seen how you can start creating design files on Figma. You can export assets. You can measure things like dimensions. But before we even went into Figma, with my colleague, you were able to learn things like typography, the use of colors, when to use certain colors. Why it's important to think about colors, right? And even measurements, like there are things called margin and padding, the spaces between elements, where things are put on the screen at the top or the bottom, left or right, center, right? Exporting assets, all of these things come together to help you in your design journey. Figma has resources for you to learn further, but of course we are available. If you have any questions, you need more of a walkthrough on how to use Figma, you can always reach out to us, but try to take it step by step. It's not something you can grab at all of it at first, but with determination and further research, of course, you'll be able to get a hang of it. It's not too complicated. All right, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you for being here. I think we can open up the floor for questions now.
Wow, this is speechless. What can I say? Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, sir. This was really helpful, educative, and interesting. Developers here, nobody should go and change his mind, but this is really good. I've not had this knowledge on design at all. So, but I have gained a lot here. So please, I want you to join me also in appreciating our presenters. They really did justice to this. It's really a good content. Very good content. Very. Please use emojis and react. We are plenty here. I want to see appreciation, a genuine one. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Ma. And it's a Q&A session. Please raise up your hand first. Let's follow the ground rules. Then we'll call you and allow you to speak. Anybody with question?
Hello.
Suleiman, yes, I can see your hand. Are you the one speaking?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Go ahead, please.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for this wonderful section. We learned a lot. Thanks for the presenters. I really thank the presenters. My question is, okay, when creating a designer, when design, like you are using Figma to design. Okay, first of all, as a developer, you want to create a responsive application. Which approach will you first to? Like, is it a mobile approach first to tap, then desktop, or vice versa? Then when designing the user interface using Figma, does that mean that you are going to design for the mobile interface separate, then you now move to designing for the tablet down to desktop? I don't even understand the question, sir. Hello.
Yes, they are listening. Thank you for your question.
Yes. So are we taking all the questions or answering them one after the other? Daniel?
Ma, I think we should be answering them so that we know where to stop instead of compiling them.
Okay. All right, so maybe I can take this one. So thank you for that question. Yes and no. So yes, you do have to design for, like, if you start off with web, like desktop, then you go on to mobile, go on to tablet, whatever you want. So yes, you do have to design individually for those, depending on your team, what your team requires. Some teams require the designs for all of that. Some are a bit more they're able to customize. If you give them like maybe the biggest one, they can customize it for you. But it's good practice to learn how to design for all of them. Figma has a system that allows you to use grids. Remember, we talked about grids. They help you to arrange your layout. So those grids and something else called constraints on Figma will help you so that as you even just drag your frame, you make it smaller, you make it wider, your design is adjusting, right? So that's something you can learn if you're interested. You can dig deeper on it, learn about constraints and grid system on Figma. It can help you to do that a bit more automatically. And your first question was about trying to remember. Yes, which one do you design first? So there's something called mobile first approach, where some people decide to design mobile first and then go up to a wider screen. They do this so that they design the best experience for mobile, and it guides them to design for web, right, or for desktop. But you can do it the other way too. You can design, I prefer personally to design for a wider screen and come down to web. But in the beginning, I try to imagine, as I'm designing for this desktop, what would web look like and what would mobile look like? I try to keep it in my mind, right? So that when I get to designing for mobile, I know what I'm doing and I'm not like confused. So there's different approaches you can take to it. I don't know if my colleague has any additions, but that's it from me for this.
Not at all from my end. I think that you provided a very good answer to that, right? And coming from the direction that you can actually employ the mobile first approach, right? Depending as well to in real life, when you come into in real life, it actually depends on the priority of your team, yeah, right? If the team actually wants a web-based approach, first you have to do that, right? And walk down that path, right? Web tablet. They might want a tablet version and not want a tablet version, right? At times we have some frameworks that automatically cover the responsiveness of how, right, the page might look like. So you just design for web and covers for tablet, then you provide the mobile interface. But basically, she has actually answered this question, and I hope that you are not. This actually provides clarity to more to the answer. Thank you. We'll move to the next question, please. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. So, actually, Emmanuel, please, your question should be short, please, and brief. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ma, for your wonderful presentation. My area of specialty is web development, but I have a brief or small knowledge about Figma. But your presentation here has really broadened my knowledge. So I'm a bit confused. I just want to ask, this Figma, is it like a free platform, an open source platform, where I can go play with some designs, then come back to my HTML and CSS to design them? Because I saw you did share some light on converting Figma to CSS, sharing designs and plugins. Are all these things free of charge? Like I can just go there, sign up and design something, then as a developer, then go to my HTML and CSS to carry those designs along. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just answer this question. So for this, yes, for Figma, right? So Figma is actually is actually a price platform, but there's actually a free tier platform, right, for beginners, right? And I think that you're able to start with 3 files. I think the maximum is 3 files, so you're able to do and play around, create designs up on that particular free tier, right? Then if you actually need to create more than 3 files, I think that you have to upgrade to a professional account, which is actually about $15 every month, I believe. And I think still on the free tier account, you can create unlimited designs as drafts, right? You just continue having that as drafts, right? As well too. So fine, you can experiment with a whole lot, get templates, look at or get templates of designs that have already been made, dissect it to see how it has already been designed, right? And and redesign yours. So Figma has a free tier account which will be sufficient for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful answer. Okay, moving to Gabriel, please. Let it be brief also. Thank you. All right, Gabriel is not available.
Okay, yeah, I didn't hear it. I didn't hear you when you called me. Sorry, my network skipped.
Right, sir. Let it be brief before the time.
Just a brief question. The same thing that was taught, is it the same thing that is on the e-learning platform so that some of us learn better when we get to study to where just want to confirm?
Yes, very well. Yes. The content of the e-learning platform is even more comprehensive than this. Yes. So it's practically the same.
Thank you very much, sir, for that answer also. And thank you very much, Ma. She has been answering the questions in the chat box. I'm really, really grateful for that. Thank you so much. Your time is really, really, I cherish it, actually. What else can I say? Having you, it is what I need, the support for the program. I want to say sorry for some people that are still raising up their hand because I think time is not in our side now. I just want to say something concerning the Slack and the environment set up now. Please, if you still have any issue, I'm there in the Slack. You can always reach out to me. Then I will channel you to the proper person. Or you just go straight to your mentor. I think your mentor is your direct access. You can always reach out to your mentors. I know they'll get to me, right? Then on the submission and the e-learning, should you have any issue on the interface, just reach out to me or logging in. I will put you through on that also. Then what else again that I want to say? Then on submission and attendance, please. I've said it in the beginning of this call and now also. Please, we don't take missing calls like this or weekly session for granted. We don't take it because it will look as if your mentor who is so busy that will be available for the session will now come only to see only few persons. So he also have things on his table, but then he has to sacrifice that time for us. So please let's do well to check our Slack messages and double check again should there be any new messages so that we won't be missing out, right? And again, Slack is just the channel we'll be communicating with you people, right? In the beginning, we were putting some calls just to put you through on the environment setup. That's why it's called environment setup. But for now, I believe almost all of us are on Slack. If you're not, you can reach out to me via email, but nobody will call you again to say, okay, you do this, do that. We drop everything on Slack because Slack is developers collaboration tool. Please, let's learn how to use it because we're already in the system. So at this juncture, I want to say thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for opening up to learn in eHA Academy. Just as you're willing, so we are also willing to do our best. Thank you, and see you in the next live session.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Good
Thank you,
evening.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice